Hey, this is Peter Bell, and I am in the beautiful wine country of Central Coast, California, in Santa Maria, north end of Santa Maria, in Santa Barbara County. I serve Redeemer OPC, Redeemer Orthodox Presbyterian Church, on the north end of Santa Maria. We meet at Temple Bethel, which is right there, Temple Bethel, at 11 a.m. for Sunday service and 9:45 a.m., so just before that, for Sunday school for all ages. We have kids Sunday school, adult Sunday school, or all Sunday school at 9:45. You can find us at discoverredeemer.org with one R. Again, discoverredeemer.org. We have a bunch of activities throughout the week, but most importantly, Sunday we have the gospel preached, the sacraments administered, and church discipline faithfully brought out. So I hope to see you here at Redeemer OPC in Santa Maria, Central Coast, wine country of Santa Barbara. Hope to see you.
Hey everybody, this is Pastor Danny Hyde from the Oceanside United Reformed Church. I want to invite you out to our church. We meet in sunny Southern California, here in San Diego, and we meet at the Army Navy Academy in Carlsbad, right along the ocean, as you can see, the Pacific. And we meet every Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning. We hear the Word of God, we hear the gospel preached. We have the Lord's Supper every Sunday morning, and then we have Sunday school at about noon for kids. We come again together at 5 o'clock every night, Sunday night, for teaching, prayer, and singing. And then we also have various midweek groups, Bible studies, men's, women's, and also other Bible studies as well throughout the week. So I want to invite you out to worship with us. If you know anybody in the area here in North County of San Diego, invite them as well. Let them know. You can find out more about us on our website, oceansideurc.org, or also on all those various social media. You'll find us as well. God bless.
Hello, everyone. Yet once again, it's another day of fresh grace and mercy. This is the Guilt, Grace, Gratitude podcast, where we bridge the gap to Reformed Christian theology for your listening pleasure. Today is a season 7 episode on finding Jesus Christ through all of Scripture, from Genesis to Revelation. And today's episode is on the book of Joshua. So we're starting the historical books. Last week, we finished up the Pentateuch, the Torah, and we are moving forward, going into the Promised Land. So we're picking up where Deuteronomy left off, and now the successor to Moses is Joshua, whose role and name even points to Jesus himself. So Joshua served Moses under the law and then fulfilled the temporal promise given to Abraham, just as Jesus would come to serve under the law and fulfill it perfectly and bring us victory to the spiritual kingdom of God. And so, yeah, we're going to get into this conversation with my two co-hosts, Dr. Daniel Hyde and Peter Bell, here in a moment. But some resources and references and things like that. I've really been enjoying the Bible Project videos to help remind myself and on some of these discussions of each book of the Bible and how it points to Christ. Another book that I've been looking at is The Glory and Fullness of Jesus Christ in the Most Remarkable Types, Figures, and Allegories of the Old Testament, William McEwen, RHB publication here. I also have Introducing the Old Testament, Robert Hubbard and Andrew Dearman by Erdman's publication. The NIV Biblical Theology Study Bible, published by Zondervan, edited D.A. Carson. I got the RHB publisher Family Worship Bible Guide. And then also a new one here, the Lexham Academic Evangelical Biblical Theology Commentary. Here's Joshua right here. So helpful stuff, not too shabby for a layperson trying to figure all this stuff out. But then most importantly, I got two pastors on here. They're very helpful, and that's the whole point. We're going to walk through this stuff, flush it out. There's a lot to talk about in biblical theology. So if we zero it down to try to getting it into about an hour conversation, we're just focusing on how we're pointing things to Christ and how we see Jesus Christ in all of Scripture. Yes, even the Old Testament. So we'll get into this conversation here in a moment. Now I will also go to our show notes. I apologize. I almost jumped right into the conversation. So go to our show notes and find us on YouTube, subscribe to us there. Find us on Twitter and Instagram, see our email, see our website, see the link to drive you to a confessional Reformed Presbyterian church near your area by typing in your zip code. And then, okay, I think now I've said everything. So I'll let Peter and Danny introduce themselves. Hello, guys.
Yeah.
Whoa.
This will be fun. So even though people are listening to this a week after our Deuteronomy episode, this is the next morning. So we recorded Deuteronomy on a Thursday morning, and then we are recording Joshua on a Friday morning. So how's your Thursday afternoon, Danny? This is the last time we saw you.
Yeah, it was so long ago.
We're cramming these in.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. How's your sermon? I mean, I know you just preached Exodus. How's your sermon series going at Oceanside? I think you've only preached 2 of them, right?
I've only done 2. So yeah, my big like whole Bible overview in like basically 1 year.
You'll be well into it by the time this publishes.
I'll be in
you're only 2 in.
Like I'll be doing Leviticus this Sunday as we're talking. So I don't know, what is this? Is this episode 7?
This is episode 8.
8. So this is like the end of February, right?
Yeah, this is like this publishes February 19th.
Okay, so yeah, I'll be somewhere like, I don't know, what is it, like Judges, like for Samuel probably, whatever, like in Feb. So yeah, it's going good, going well. So I did the first one, Genesis, the last Sunday of September. Yeah. Then I took all of October off. I was on sabbatical, whatever, and then I came back to it last Sunday, first Sunday of November, and I did Exodus. And I did my longest sermon of all time.
Was Danny Hyde's longest? So for those who didn't know, what's your longest sermon now? Huh?
That was so long. It was like 54 minutes. It was crazy. Like I looked
down,
I was like,
at the edge of their seats, huh? The whole time.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, 40 chapters. Like it was like someone said like on Twitter, like, oh, that's like 90 seconds a chapter. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much what it was. But
did it feel like 40 years?
No, I mean, I mean, honestly, it was fun. Like I was having a former intern of mine like messaged me and was like, oh, if I did that, if I go past 25, like the old people in church, like crucify me every Sunday.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I was just having fun up there. So you know, like talking about this and that and all the cool pictures and types and shadows and point. At
least it wasn't 54 minutes on 2 verses, like a lot of like a lot of people. There's 54 minutes on 40 chapters. So at least
I'll be in Leviticus this Sunday, 27 chapters. And so, you know, I'm definitely not going to spend that much time.
53 minutes, maybe. We'll keep it at that.
Yeah. I'll shorten it up a little bit, tighten it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, no, it's good.
But I was going to mention a couple books.
Do it.
Just commentary. Like if people want to like find a commentary and like, hey, what is this verse?
Yeah, the one Nick promoted is actually a really good commentary. The one that Lexham published, it's a biblical theology commentary.
Okay.
He does a really good job on Joshua.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Who's the author again?
Oh, yeah. David Firth.
It's a very good commentary.
His name sounds familiar to me. Why?
Yeah, I don't the name's familiar to me. I didn't know where he came from.
Is he like a Scottish Presbyterian guy or something?
What's the back of it say, Nick? What's his bio?
What's his bio?
David Firth, PhD, University of Pretoria,
South Africa.
Is tutor in Old Testament at Trinity College, Bristol.
Oh, okay.
Author of Including the Stranger, New Studies in Biblical Theology, First and Second Samuel, Apollos, Old Testament Commentary, and
that's where I knew him.
The Message of Joshua.
Yeah, he wrote in the NSBT series. That's how I know him.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a really good. Yeah, so Danny, what are your?
I mean, like probably another like this one's like a simple one, like anybody can pick up and read. You probably heard of like Dale Ralph Davis.
Oh yeah, his stuff on Judges is pretty good. There's some stuff cool. I'm like, I don't really know if I see that, but
it's like your typical kind of like, like it's what is it, 150 pages? No, it's like 200 pages, but
it's a little more focused on Christ than other commentaries.
I think he's PCA. He's a PCA pastor.
I think so.
So yeah, good. Yeah, good. You know, kind of solid. Like, you know, reformed, kind of evangelical.
I think he's like more. He's a hair more on like the application side too, which I think helps a lot too.
This one, well, I don't know if this is still in print, but like this is the the New International Commentary, Old Testament.
Okay.
NIC, the Nikot.
Woodstra.
This is Martin Woodstra, taught at Calvin. So this is a good Dutch guy.
There you go.
I plug the Dutch Reformed guys when you can. So
I feel like you can find that from his name, Woodstra.
So Dr. Woodstra, yeah. So he taught at Calvin seminary back in the day. Book of Joshua. So it's fairly short. I mean, for a Joshua commentary. And then this one's probably a little harder to find, but it's like the series is called Bible Students Commentary. That's the English title. There's an old Dutch Reformed commentary series in the Netherlands called Court of Verklaring, and it's like short commentaries is what it is. So this is Joshua, Judges, and Ruth by C.J. Goslinga, or Goslinga, as we would say.
I love the cover in that size of a book. Yeah,
my cover's all ripped up into shreds because it's super old. But
I thought you were gonna say it's because you used it so much.
Yeah. I mean, I've from time to time I've browsed. I mean, I've never preached to Joshua. I've taught through it, but it's quite a while ago. So I'll be using it here pretty soon when I do my sermon. So
I was about to say, my resource was Sun Stand Still from Stephen Furtick. That's my nerve. I don't know who's gonna get that joke. Who's listening right now?
Well,
oh my goodness.
Dave, do you know who Stephen Furtick is?
Yeah, he's not.
No, I was totally
not a reliable source.
Funny story. That was one of the first theological books I had ever read. I'm pretty sure it was John MacArthur on Prodigal Son was the first theological book I'd ever read. This is 2010. And then I think next up after that, because I was at Biola, and this is when Stephen Furtick got really big. And I think this is his first published book. I don't know why
he has books. I have no idea he even has books.
He does. He has quite a few books.
Oh, he should practice reading the Bible before.
This is not an ad for Stephen Furtick, so don't you dare anybody.
Does he pull the Mark Driscoll thing and like has his church spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on copies and make it a New York Times bestseller?
I'm pretty sure he did. But his book Sun Stand Still was one of the first books I ever read, and the first theological book at Biola. It wasn't assigned by Biola.
S-U-N or S-O-N, son? S-U-N?
S-U-N. I'm pretty sure.
What's it on? Is it about Joshua 10?
It's about Joshua 10. Yep.
Is it like prosperity gospel stuff or?
I mean, it leans that way. This is not quite to that point in Furtick's ministry, but you can like tell he's leaning that way.
But you can call the sun, but you can speak the sun standing still too. If you just.
I don't remember what his point in the book was, but he made a lot of hay out of the sun standing still, of course.
Yeah, there you go.
Of course, well, that's not,
well, I guess we'll come to that, right? So
we'll flush that out.
Yep.
So before my first question, I kind of like to see if some of the structure that I've come across of suggestions on the structure match well with you guys. What I saw is chapters 1 through 12, the conquest of Canaan. And then chapters 13 to 21, tribal inheritances. And then chapters 22 to 24, early settlement years.
I'm pretty sure that's generally agreed upon, at least the broader structure. Yeah.
Yep. Like, the conquest, divvying up of the pieces of land. And then, basically it's like a covenantal. At the end of it, it's like, hey, keep the covenant, stay in the land.
Joshua 24. Right? Yep.
It's like a call to obedience. Like, me and my house will serve the Lord, right? Put that in your type that one out and put it on your on your
Joshua 1 and Joshua 24 have some quips that are on a lot a lot of coffee mugs in the world right now.
Yeah.
And if you knew the context of it, you wouldn't have that verse on
would not. That's right.
Yeah.
And maybe some helpful background even behind the structure is when we're looking at the book of Joshua, you're looking at Deuteronomy 17 now kind of applied. This is what they're told to do in the book of Deuteronomy. They're supposed to obey the law. They're supposed to purify the land. And we see exactly what they're supposed to do in the book of Deuteronomy. And then in Joshua, we start seeing is like, are they going to do this? Are they going to be faithful to the Lord? Are they going to obey the Lord? Are they going to obey the law?
Yep.
Are they going to purify this land? And you kind of feel towards the end of it is like, I don't think they're going to obey this very well.
Yeah. You were mentioning popular passages. I you might laugh at me, but I don't care. I really like I always have the, as for me and my home, we will serve the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's I know that's a Hobby Lobby popular coffee cup. First, I get it, but
that is.
I just really it is the word of God.
I'm almost positive that verse, like he's chastising Israel. He's like, he's saying like, you're not going to serve it, but like I'm going to.
And I mean, it's still got its right point. So
I mean the principle, certainly the principle applies. I mean, I'm half joking, but I'm also half serious about because we take those verses like way out of context. Like, if my people who are called by my name would call, would pray, I would heal their land. American flag, superimpose on that verse. Okay. I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you whenever. And it's like, do you really know the context of which that was spoken? Like,
Yeah, Israel's in
are you,
exile in Jeremiah 29, and they're like,
like,
"What am
are
I
you
supposed to
going to
do
go
now?"
circumcise yourself and have a covenant renewal ceremony too before you pronounce that verse? Probably not, but
No one
No, and
wants
they're
to
like,
circumcise
they're
themselves.
helpful verses, but yeah, I think we become so atomistic, ATOM, that we forget the context of these, and we
yeah, it's a great
like
verse,
kind of
but
the American evangelical
yeah.
problem and a lot of reform problem of going straight from that verse into our context versus seeing where does this stand historically, through the fulfillment of Christ, and then where does it come to us?
Yeah. And here's the great thing: Joshua, was a wretched sinner who said that, and he failed. All the Israelites failed. They all got exiled. A lot of them died. They came back as a super tiny remnant and never were the same again. Their temple was destroyed in 70 AD. Oh, but by the way, like there is one who actually, said, for me and my house will serve the Lord, and because of him, we can actually serve the Lord.
Joshua said it and then didn't.
There's always
do
a Christological thing to it,
Joshua is like, I will serve the Lord. For me and my house, I will serve the Lord. And then towards the end, I was like, not really. And then you get the one who does serve the Lord. Yeah.
So everyone, keep your coffee mugs, keep your Hobby Lobby.
No, you gotta break them like the reformers.
Or just get a plain coffee mug. No verses.
Or like mine. You can. It's backwards.
There you go.
Listen to this episode too to answer context and stuff like that, and learn more about why the verse surrounding all scripture around it makes more sense.
Yeah, so you got to read. Sorry for this little thing, but you got to read Joshua with Deuteronomy in the back of your mind. That's Deuteronomy is setting you up for Joshua, and I think, like Nick, what you're saying is so often we'll read, or Danny, we'll read Joshua kind of separated from everything else, like kind of cool stories, and war starts happening in Joshua, so it gets fun, and there's a lot of killing, there's a lot of death, the wall falls down, but we forget that this is the law applied to the land. This is the law applied to the people. This is like, what are they doing to fulfill this? What are they doing to obey this? If we don't keep Deuteronomy in the back of our mind, then it's very easy to make these like kind of moralistic stories.
So
good stuff.
It's immediately following Deuteronomy, so there's not really a time lapse. We're going right into crossing the Jordan, and then the walls of Jericho, the saving of Rahab.
Saving of Rahab is before the fall of Jericho.
Oh, okay. I might have flip-flopped him. And then, pointed, Jesus is our better Joshua, and then the promised land and rest. So question
or
here
promised land and rest, question mark?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Is it the rest? Yeah, is what you're saying. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's because we got Hebrews 4 lurking in the background there. I was like, did they actually rest?
Okay. So there's an already but not yet element again. For some eschatological terms that I'm sure makes people like GK Beale happy, saying already but not yet. Anyway, how do
we say already not yet? You have the apparition of Beale that just appears out of nowhere right in front of you, saying, "Hey, what's up?"
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
So question with that explanation there, breaking things down and categories for Joshua, how do these main sections and events create a theological structure that's helpful to understand how this book will break down so everyone can understand it?
Yeah, well, maybe we can like fly over episode to episode and kind of how they attach to one another, because you get them in the land, and you get Joshua kind of charging them in Joshua 1, and you get Rahab because the spies are going out to see the land, and they go to a prostitute's house, which is not where you should be going as a soldier or a spy, because you kind of wonder what's going on there, and then they have to go to the spy. Then you have the warrior of Yahweh in the middle of Joshua 5, beginning of Joshua 6. You have Jericho's walls. I think that's Joshua 7 or 6.
6,
and then you have war and conquest, and then you have the allotments in Joshua 13 to all the tribes of Israel. And then the Levites are left out because they don't have a land allotment. And then you have Caleb in Joshua 15 that kind of connects him with Judges 3. And then there's just a lot of allotment stuff, and we'll go through this stuff as we get into it. And then you get Joshua 22 to 24, which is like a renewal ceremony, like what Danny was talking about, where we've sort of kind of taken over this land, although it's not really true that we took over this land because we're still taking the loot and we still haven't destroyed everything. We're starting to marry the Canaanites. Now let's make a covenant with the Lord because we did all we're supposed to do. And you're like, are you sure about that? Because then you get to Judges 1 that very, very pronouncedly said you did not do what I told you to do.
Yep.
So there's a quick little flyover. I don't know what Danny wants to add details of that stuff.
No, it's all good, man. Yeah, I mean, it's just there's lots of there's definitely lots of interesting story, like fun stories.
Yeah.
In Joshua that people will probably
there's like a lot of felt board stories in here.
Yep. Yeah. If you have any any kind of knowledge of the Old Testament, you know that there's some stories here,
yep,
that stick out. So you may have heard of Rahab, and
yep,
you may have, they cross over the Jordan River.
Did you do the walking around the Jericho's walls back in youth group before? Like we're gonna walk around Jericho's walls and watch the wall come tumbling. I did that in youth group. We walked around 7 times. And the walls.
No, we didn't do it in youth group, man. We did it in the real big church, the real deal.
You did the real big church. We never got to the real big church.
Yeah, see, my church in Rancho Santa Margarita back in the day, when I was a youth pastor, that's what we did one Sunday. The pastor, the pastor was totally feeling it up there during this worship time, and he like walks down from the podium down the steps. He grabs the hand of our associate pastor. And starts going like around the inside walls of the sanctuary.
So like kind of Joshua and Caleb.
And so exactly. And then the associate pastor grabs hold of like his wife, and then she grabs hold of somebody. And then so they're on this side of the church, and Kara Jean and I are on this side of the church.
Yeah.
And I'm, and at this point, I've been studying and exploring all these different religions, and I'm becoming more like reformed-ish in my mind because I'm learning stuff. And I'm seeing them come over. I'm seeing him like get to that corner of the sanctuary, and now they're like making the turn to the back wall, and then we're gonna be down they're gonna pass the center aisle and come to the far aisle, and we're like on the aisle on this side of the church, and I'm starting to like sweat bullets, and I'm like, oh gosh, they're gonna come over here and grab me. What do we do? What do we do? And I'm sitting there, you get that feeling. You're like if you pretend like you're sitting still and no one can see you.
Yeah. Don't look at me. Don't see me. Nobody's going to touch me.
And they're marching around no one grabbed us. And, I was all nervous, and they're doing this whole thing. And then, like what in the heck? And the pastor was like, just as, they march around the walls of Jericho, we got to march around and we got to like, this is a Pentecostal church, of course, and we got to speak forth, against all the walls of, that hinder us and all the things in our lives that block our path. And, like you're kind of like light, sort of prosperity gospel light.
Sure. Yeah. It's not quite there, but it kind of sounds like a little bit,
but like, it's definitely like the triumphal,
well,
it's like even like, in our circles, we have the same thing, like A.W. Pink's, gleanings on Joshua kind of commentary, where it's like, you're in the wilderness. That's the carnal Christian.
Yeah.
And then or that's the unbelieving, or whatever, and then you cross the river, like that's the passing through into the abundant, blessed, higher Christian life, or whatever you want to call it. So, it's, we can definitely allegorize it, but you're right. You need to learn that when you read the stories for what they really are, like they're more exciting than like your little trite, applications. So
I got one question for you. Did you guys do that 6 days in a row, and then on the 7th?
Yeah, you're right. We did.
Horns
we didn't blow any horns. So I guess
we just walked around 7 times and called it 7 days.
I don't remember if we even did it 7 times.
That's why it didn't work. You're supposed to do it the way that's.
I know.
That's why the walls didn't come tumbling down. It's because we didn't.
And the thing was, like, if we would have done it right, and the Lord would have actually like done what He did in Joshua, like all the walls would have fallen inward, right?
That's right.
They would have fallen on top of us. So praise the Lord. He didn't like do what He did in the days of Joshua. I wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah, because they're outside the wall, and the walls come tumbling down, versus being inside the walls. The walls come tumbling down.
Yeah. The walls fell inside, not outside. So
that since we're on that, I'm gonna try to jump around on some of my questions or things that I wanted to bring out.
Do it. You're the driver right now.
So there is some matches to like numbers and stuff, like not the book of Numbers, but like symbolism.
Well, there's still some stuff to Numbers.
Yeah,
so there's some law regulations.
I just don't want to think of like the book of Numbers. So I'm talking about like God told them to march around for 6 days, and you think of the 6 days of creation.
Yep.
Maybe something's going on
how many times they marched around each of those 6 days?
And then the 7th day, they were
question.
to blow their trumpet horn, which is like proclaiming the gospel.
They're shofars.
Well, they go around once a day for 6 days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the 7th day, how many times do they go around?
Is it 7? I don't remember. Go ahead, and you put me on the spot. I don't
No,
remember.
I just
So
I thought it was 7 times the 7th day.
Yeah,
I
it's
thought
7
that's
times
what
in the
I
7th
was
day.
just saying
Yep.
too.
Yeah, yeah.
But I didn't know if I. You
Well,
looked at me like
then
I
you said that you
didn't get it.
confused me. I'm like,
Sorry, we got Nick all flustered. Sorry, that's
am I, yeah.
Well,
And then
I
I
thought
got
it
flustered.
was 7 times on the 7th day. So, but then they blow their
The shofar.
horns.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
and it kind of based on what I was reading, commentary or stuff like that, is that it's it seems like it's a non-carnal foolish thing. Like they're like, how in the world is this gonna bring down the walls of Jericho? But it kind of points to like us proclaiming the gospel around the world.
Well, the shofar originally was used for like war cries. It's like we're about to start a war. Because they also use it in Judges too. The shofar shows up a few times in Judges, both as a war cry, and I think there's also 2 more. I think it's also it's either Day of Atonement or something else. It's one of the Jewish festivals. Yeah.
Yep. There are silver trumpets.
Yeah.
That are blown like on worship days, but the shofar is a war horn.
Okay.
Yeah, war horn, and then Judges. I think it's used. Oh, this is gonna stretch me. I've preached on this. I think it's used at the end of Judges 3 by Gideon. No, Ehud or Ehud or not. I forget who it was, but it's proclaimed like victory at the end of their war, because he stabs the fat king, and then he blows the shofar as like a victory cry.
So Nick's big point is like, it's a non like carnal thing. So, what's the point of it? It looks foolish. It looks stupid.
Yeah.
How do you win a war by just walking around a wall and then and then on the 7th day you do it 7 times and you blow a horn? That's the point. It's God.
Mm-hmm.
God does
it's God who's doing it, and they're obeying what God says.
They got no weapons.
Yeah. So
they're just walking around.
They're definitely, like through the history of redemption, like it comes to us in that sense of, that the gospel is the thing that's foolish to the world, but yet we obey what God says and we proclaim the word. And we let, our weapons are not carnal, they're spiritual. So we proclaim the word and we pray and we ask the Lord to be the one who's victorious.
There we go.
Nick, sorry to put Nick on the hot seat again, but I think this is how. Do you know what happens right before the fall of Jericho? This is end of Joshua 5, beginning of Joshua 6.
Well, I know Joshua interacts with somebody. It could be an angel.
Bingo. That's exactly what happens.
And he asks them, who are you fighting for? And he's like, neither you or your enemies. So he's not fighting with Joshua, and he's not fighting for the enemies. So it's showing that the Israelites are spectators. They're there just to watch God do his thing. And
he's a commander of the armies of the Lord, like the Lord of hosts. So
there's a few things. Look at I'm looking at Joshua 5:14 and 15. It says, and he said, I'm using this is I think this is KJV. Nay, but I am the captain of the host of the Lord. I am now come. And notice what Joshua does. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and bowed down and said to him, what saith my Lord unto his servants? In verse 15, and the captain of the Lord's host said unto Joshua, put off thy shoe from thy foot. So take off your shoes. For the place where you stand is holy. And Josh did so. Where else do we see that?
Moses, burning bush. Burning bush.
Yep. It's Exodus 3.
What does the messenger have in his hand? He got a sword.
There's a flaming sword, right?
Yeah, got a sword. What else does that kind of sound like?
Cherubim.
That's Genesis 3.
This is the cherubim in front of Genesis 3. And so they're like kind of setting up Jericho a little bit like a Garden of Eden. This is blocked by this warrior.
You mean the promised land is like a Garden of Eden?
Promised land is kind of like the Garden of Eden. It's
and Jericho's like
by
the door,
this warrior, this messenger with a sword. And then the promises, or what Yahweh says at the beginning of Joshua 6 is, I'm giving this land to you, which is what he says to Abraham. So it's kind of set up as like this renewed quote unquote promised land.
Very cool. Okay.
So now you see, like when the walls come tumbling down, it's it's not just like, oh, we got to take this and warrior and we're gonna destroy everybody. It's like this is an Edenic kind of promised land in some sense that they're coming back to inherit.
Oh, Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Danny.
No, I was gonna say, like, yeah, it's like picturesque of like they're entering back into this place. That's why it says it's flowing with milk and honey, right? Yep. Like it's language of like a paradise place.
Yeah, and he's face to face with pre-incarnate Jesus, kind of a theophany of sorts, where he has to take his sandals off because he's in the presence of Yahweh.
And the angel never tells him don't do that. Like say like in Revelation 22, when John falls down for the angel's like, hey, get up, get up. What are you doing, man? Like, no, this angel accepts the worship and tells him that he's in the presence of God.
Yeah, that's why we have to see these episodes together versus stripping the fall of Jericho or the fall of the walls of Jericho from its like immediate context.
Yep.
Which is the messenger of Yahweh with a sword. And again, if you're a Jew listening to this in exile, wherever you are, like, what are you thinking of? You're thinking of the last time we saw this was in Genesis 3 and in Exodus 3. Like this is Edenic kind of language. This is them going back, quote unquote, into the promised land to inherit this Yahweh present, Yahweh walking area where we can finally commune with him.
Amen. Yeah, speaking of that, what we're talking about with the Christian weapons of Christian warfare being non-carnal. I got a great quote within this book.
I was about to say that sounds like Puritan language, non-carnal.
I know, but it's a great quote within this glory of fullness of Jesus Christ book. It says, the mighty weapons of the Christian warfare, which are not carnal, the feeble voice of the gospel, which when faithfully preached, though not with a silver sound or with excellency of speech, shall be mighty through God to triumph over all opposition.
There you go.
So, I wanted to, if I'm sure we'll get back to, we're talking about Jericho. So I do want to mention a historical kind of statement here. In Joshua, there's 3 main cities that are part of the
actually,
Canaan.
Before you get to that, maybe one other thing on Jericho, because like you said, the number 7.
Yes,
it's not just. I mean, I think this is rather important here because it gets set up quite a bit because you got 6 days where they walk around once,
right?
And the 7th day they walk around 7 times.
Yep.
So I mean, use your kind of biblical imagination. What with number 7? Where else do we see number 7 in Scripture?
Rest.
Where on the 7th day something is sanctified,
right? Sanctified and rest.
This is it's picturing in some sense. This is like they're walking into Edenic paradise of sorts, and God sanctifies or God holifies Eden on the 7th day. So there's a little bit of that language too, where this is a picture, not the actual things we get in Hebrews 4. That this is not what they're looking for. There's a picture of it. There's a picture of Sabbath rest of some sort.
Yep. And the whole thing is devoted to the Lord, right? So Cherem warfare, the devotion, things are given to God.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of stuff to take in, but if we don't put all this stuff in, it's very easy to go too far or too little, like moralize this or just purely allegorize the fall of Jericho's walls instead of seeing this as like they're looking for a Genesis 3, if you can call it that, quote unquote, Edenic paradise, the Sabbath rest with God. That's what he's picturing in this.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And
are we going to talk about so in this chapter it talks about devoting to destruction? Are we going to mention it like we did last time in Deuteronomy about what about God's command?
Yeah, we'll get. I think Nick's got a question.
Is that in our questions? I didn't see it in our questions.
We'll get into it.
Well, okay, cool. We'll get into it, but just to help people with the historical background of what's going on in Joshua with the Canaan conquest, getting the Israelites to come to the promised land where the Canaanites are. There's 3 main cities of the battles that they talk about in Joshua is Jericho, which we just were talking about, which is successful, and then the battle of
kind of successful.
Yeah, and the battle of Ai, which we'll talk about, didn't really go that well, but then the battle of Hazor. And then it's estimated period. This doesn't really matter, but just fun to note and think about is It's probably around 1500 to 1100 BC.
So it's a big type.
Yeah, I know. Give and take 400 years there, but it's a long time ago. It's right after Deuteronomy.
It's after Moses. That's what I'm pretty comfortable saying.
Yeah, we don't need to think too much about the year, but just knowing.
But isn't that that's way too early though to say 1500, right? Because
that's about to say that's even before the Exodus.
Even the most conservative estimates of Red Sea crossing is it's in the 1440s.
I was about to say it's like 1400s to 1300s.
So that would mean 40 years. So that would mean at the latest,
it's probably closer to 1100.
1400 at the latest, but yeah, I mean, depends on how you date the Exodus. So
cool.
Yeah, or how many generations have actually passed, all that stuff.
Something like that. Yeah, I mean, just ballpark numbers. Yeah, somewhere 1400.
We can very generally broadly say this is after Moses has died.
Yeah,
whenever
that's all we need to know. Just
that we can say for certain. Yeah,
yeah. So I know Danny seems to be chomping at the bit talking about the command of taking.
Danny just wants to talk about death. That's
how about we
warn destruction?
How about we go into that, and then I have other questions that kind of are helpful. So the command of God from God to have the people of Israel go into the land.
How is that not a command for genocide?
But before I go in, there is we know that the Canaanites were practicing sinful things. There's sexual sin, there's
as were the Israelites,
and there was practice of child sacrifices. Yep. We know the Israelites weren't perfect and they were sinners, but they were also under the guidance of God and knew God. So how do we take this in without seeing sin as a sliding scale? How do you answer somebody with is it black and white? The Canaanites totally bad guys, Israelites totally good guys. They're instructed to wipe them out so the Canaanites don't have any sort of influence whatsoever, or is it a little more gray than that? Or how do we look at that
maybe I'll give two categories and Danny can fill this in, because generally speaking in evangelical circles, and I think a lot of reform circles too, it is Israel good, Canaan bad, and that's why God told Israel to kill all the Canaanites, because they're bad people, and you're good people. I need good people in this land and not bad people. Or you get the opposite side, quote unquote, which is God commanded genocide, and how can you possibly follow a God who commanded to kill all these seemingly innocent people? Maybe there were some bad people there, but Israel wasn't as good, so why didn't he command Israel to be killed as well? So I think you have two kind of poles on this quote unquote separate sides. And like you said, I think there's a little bit more nuance that we have to see from the text itself, not us kind of imposing stuff, but from the text itself. So Denny, if you want to fill that in a little bit too.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I just think the key thing is to always keep in mind the justice of God. It's like Genesis 18, when Abraham is talking with the Lord. And there's I can't remember if it's Abraham or if it's the Lord, says, but does not the judge of all the earth do right? So just to keep in mind, because
which happens right before Abraham mediates pretty much for Sodom and Gomorrah, saying, hey, what if there's 50 people in Sodom who are righteous?
Yeah. So, like the Bible says, if you commit one sin, you've violated the entirety of the law. So God would have been just to wipe out Adam and Eve. Sure. Like God would have been just. We saw in Exodus, like when Moses in Exodus 32, the Lord's like, hey, these people are making they're making idols on there. I'm going to wipe them all out.
It's not like 100 sins in Canaan versus 30 sins in Israel, and therefore Canaan, hey, you got the bad end of the stick.
So I just think we got to keep focused on the justice of God, that God is just, God is righteous. He justly could have, ended, the whole creation thing, right after the fall. At any point he could cease life. There's no one better than another. There are sins that are worse and more heinous than others, but and judgment too, judgment,
but not sins that are more, you can say, worthy of more judgment from God. Everything's worthy of judgment of God. There might
Joshua
be
has to tell the Israelites,
in
Joshua 24, he has to tell the Israelites at the very, very end to put away the false gods that they served in Egypt, and that your father served, that you served beyond the river in Egypt. Like,
we forget that they created false gods before they went into Canaan. It wasn't Canaan that made them worship false gods. Israel.
And why would you have to call them
fine doing it on their own?
Why would you have to call them put away false gods that you served over the river in the wilderness if they either didn't have little trinkets or they weren't doing it in their heart? So yeah, I just think we got to keep the focus on the justice of God and not like, yeah, they were worse, so they did bad things. Yeah, they did bad things. Sure, they did. But nothing worse to like they got judged because they did that sin, and all the people in Mesopotamia didn't do those things, so they didn't get judged yet. So
and because it kind of puts in the question, if we go that like sliding scale, it kind of puts in the question, well, why did God judge these people and not these people? Because they look a lot worse, or they look a lot better. Or why did he judge them? Because they look a lot better than these other people. So then you start kind of toying with God's justice when you make
there's like a great quote. Yeah, I found a great liner. Well, it's like a paragraph, but in this book again by this is Reverend Domini, the Dutch guy, C.J. Goslinga, in his comments on Joshua, he says kind of what we're talking about here, that the book of Joshua describes the extermination of the inhabitants of Canaan as being extremely harsh and severe. Did Israel really have the right to act as she did? Was she not guilty of needless cruelty? Says the book of Joshua doesn't directly answer these questions, but regardless, the destruction of the native population is something that happened as a matter of course. And then he says, on the surface, this ruthless destruction gives the impression of being cold-blooded and arbitrary. Therefore, we need to consider what is implied elsewhere in the Bible on this matter. And he mentions a whole bunch of passages. He says that the rest of the scripture makes it clear that the Lord had patiently put up with the sins of the Canaanites for a long time. But when Israel entered the land, the measure of the Canaanite sins was full. God, the righteous judge of the earth, Genesis 18:25, had resolved to all but annihilate these nations and to give their land to Israel, though Israel also was unworthy. So that's, kind of the key thing there. And then he says this is what I think is really important. God willed to execute that judgment primarily through the sword of the Israelites, not by water, as in the flood, or by fire, as in the destruction of the cities of the Valley of Salt, Sodom and Gomorrah. And then he says, all this implies that the extermination of the Canaanites should be seen as a divine judgment, whose enforcement was a sacred task because it had nothing less than the execution of the vengeance of God against a sinful people. So, it's God's judgment. In Sodom and Gomorrah, God directly sends fire. In the flood, God causes the flood. In this case, he just happens to use swords in the hands of his people. But he's still executing the same justice.
There's even judgment on Israel for not producing the judgment that Yahweh told them to do against Canaan. So Israel is even judged for not judging properly, for not committing war. So even in the midst of them taking this, like, they're still judged when they're trying to judge Canaan. So there's multiple layers in this that I think we miss when we like to simplify this.
And then I think people just got to realize too, when you read the Old Testament judgments like this and all the judgments of God in the Old Testament, not just this, but all the judgments. They're finite examples of what's going to happen in the final judgment. Like, so Christian, don't forget that you believe in the second coming, in the last judgment, and then when you pray thy kingdom come, you're praying for that final manifestation of God's kingdom to come, which will be a putting of sheep on one side and goats on the other, a sifting,
and not just towards a particular people group like this. It's going to be for all nations, all tribes,
and it's going to be, there's going to be judgment, and a perfect righteous judgment. God is the judge of all. He will do right, but we do believe in that final judgment, and these temporary judgments in the Old Testament are just pictures of that final perfect judgment.
And I think Klein names this, like, he calls it like intrusionary justice or something like that, where it's like
it's an intrusion of God's justice.
It's
like
a peak,
the final judgment coming into human space and time,
a temporary peak at eternal judgment in some sense.
And I think the story and person of Rahab is so helpful for helping explain this, because Rahab is a Canaanite. Rahab's story is fascinating.
And she's a prostitute.
She's more than a Canaanite. She's a prostitute.
But she's also Jesus's ancestor and David's. And so without Rahab, who's a Canaanite sinner, that you see the line of David coming through her, and then ultimately Jesus. So, and then on contrast, you see an Israelite, Achan, who's not a true believer, or he messed up pretty bad, and that was the battle of Ai, why it fell. And so we understand who belongs to Jesus. Rahab cared more about the church, I'll just say the Christian church as we know it, than her own nation of Canaan. And Achan cared more about maybe himself than the church.
Well, you can say he was, I mean, maybe you can go as far as like he's unregenerate, so there's kind of no desire.
So,
or, you know, like Rahab is not wiped out like everybody else in Canaan. And
that's
Achan,
where you get into really fishy waters when you're saying that Israel's doing this to Canaan because Canaan's ungodly.
So, the Lord saves this Canaanite, Gentile, prostitute, sinner.
So it can't be all Canaan that's judged because she's part of Canaan.
And not all Israel.
He judges an Israelite who is, you know, of this generation that, you know, he's like a grandchild of those who came out of the Exodus. Who saw the miracles in the wilderness, you know, who are, you know, he presumably ate manna. Right. He ate the Lord's Supper.
He's part of the visible church, but not part of the invisible church.
But he's judged. And he's an idolater.
And Rahab is Boaz's mother. Is that right? You know, Boaz in the book of Ruth. So really, really fascinating, inspiring, encouraging, knowing about Rahab and what she did to protect the spies.
I think it's worth even getting in a little bit to Rahab's story because it's inspiring, but it's also super weird when you read through it.
I want to also, I'm going to throw this out there. I like this Puritan explained connection. You guys could go with it. I want it to be there. So whatever. So
I want a lot of things to be in scripture that are not in scripture.
Yeah, but we do see connections with the. I think I went based on reading some of the resources. The first Passover's blood on the doorposts, and then Rahab's red thread on her home, and then Jesus's blood. You guys might not.
There's a big problem. Usually when Passover is done, it's almost always blood that's put on the doorpost when they want to evoke Passover imagery, and it's also not in her doorpost, it's not her window. So there's two very
that's why I said home, not doorpost.
Yeah, there's two very different things, and like even beyond that, I think you see like a picture of I mean first Yahweh worship. You see like what on earth are spies doing at a prostitute's home on the edges of this area? Like what are they supposed to be doing? They're supposed to be stinking spying out and seeing what's happening here. And they go to a prostitute's home. These are Israelites going to a prostitute's home. Like when readers are first reading this or listening to this, like your kind of expectation is the Israelites are going there to do some stuff with Rahab. That's that's kind of how the story sets it up.
Well, I don't know. I also it keeps it sounds like almost a similar story to when Lot's family was getting rescued and out of Sodom, and you know they were told to leave, and then there was the people of Sodom were.
I mean, those are angels, messengers of the Lord in Genesis 18. This is two spies.
Correct. No, I'm not saying they were intentions
let out by Rahab. So it's like almost like Rahab is set up as a kind of unexpected messenger of Yahweh.
Correct.
But the whole thing about the whole red quote unquote red thread thing. I mean, there's no textual reason.
Christian, I know preachers
in the Bible, like why that is somehow a type of the blood of Christ. Like there's just nothing in the Bible that says that.
But why is her thread red then? Why
could have been blue, could have been white. Who knows?
I mean, we're not told why it's red. I mean, who knows? I mean,
that could have just been like red. Could have been just an abundant.
So why is that
the scarlet? The scarlet letter.
Why is that color significant and no other colors in the Bible?
Yeah,
or maybe some are. I mean, we know some are, but why is that particular scene pointed out for people like the Spurgeon types or whatever to say that that's the blood of Christ, and why not focus on what the text focuses on?
Yeah.
This Gentile prostitute Canaanite who should be under the judgment of God, who is redeemed.
Yep. Yeah, that's the more important thing. I agree.
Yeah.
So, and how is she redeemed? She says that she heard of the Red Sea, that they came out of Egypt, like that mess. Like, so she she hears the gospel
She
somehow.
hears the gospel,
which means somebody in Canaan,
And
there's some Gentile in Canaan who tells her.
The rumor mill is it's like, it's out there. So yeah, I mean, just forget the red thread thing.
Yeah.
It's just a symbol to them of like,
yeah,
right. And then by the way, back to Rahab, she's the grandmother of Boaz.
Grandmother.
She's the father of Salmon, who's the father of Boaz. So that's Matthew chapter 1 says that. So
correct.
yeah,
but
you get with Rahab too, because she takes the 2 spies into her house, and then the warriors are coming in trying to like, hey, where'd you put this? So she's also, I mean, this might be stretching the text a little bit, and something I'll admit when I'm stretching the text maybe a little bit where it's not explicit, but she's in a sense, and you actually get this a ton in the book of Judges. You get woman deliverers in the book of Judges very explicitly. You get Jael as woman deliverer, Deborah as a kind of a female prophetess. But you kind of get a preview of that with Rahab in Joshua 2, where she delivers 2 spies who may not be there for the right reasons, that she lets them go. And
she has to, I mean, quote unquote, has to save the spies, and she has to stay alive too, because she's the line of promise.
She's the line. Like, there you go. So it's when you go to
Eve.
the scarlet thread, you miss the person.
She's Eve in the story of Joshua.
I was just gonna say that. There's an Eve connection, but also, like you said, the most important thing is knowing that there are Canaanites like her who are part of Christ's church.
Gentiles are part of the church, even in the Old Testament.
Uriah the Hittite.
And God's providence, because he knows his elect people, nothing's going to stop the elect from hearing the gospel. So
Gentiles is not an exclusively New Testament thing when coming to the gospel. You see peaks, you see foretastes in the Old Testament just as much as you see in the New Testament.
So all of God's people that are elect will hear the gospel somehow. So Rahab hears it. So and she's saved. And then there's Israelites like Achan who probably aren't.
It kind of flips your expectation on its head, because you expect somebody from Israel to kind of continue this line to the deliverer, and you get this Canaanite, like the ones that they're supposed to devote to Yahweh, who's from pagan nations and worshiping pagan gods and sacrificing kids, doing all this stuff, and yet she's the one. Rahab, of everybody else, she's the one, the least expected, the prostitute, who's, like we talked about in every other story, like how on earth is God using these people? But that's how he uses us. That she's of this line of the Redeemer, and that's just not what you don't hear this until the book of, or more clearly kind of in Ruth and later on. But she's of this line, and it's just it kind of blows your expectations out of the water.
It provides a lot of comfort, because that shows that nobody's outside of God's reach, and even somebody like that's a prostitute from a unbelieving land can be saved by God. So I really liked that we talked about Rahab, but I want to move on to something that I think has some pretty good ties to the person and work of Jesus. And can you guys theologically kind of explain the name Joshua and the place and name of the Jordan River, and why they're significant theological landmarks pointing to Jesus? Where are those connections? Joshua and the Jordan River.
You get Yehoshua, you get
Yeshua.
Joshua, which is likely Jesus's name, Yehoshua in some sense. Although we're not really told it in the New Testament, but that's at least kind of the Greek translation of the Hebrew name. So you get Yehoshua, and it's also, we get Hebrews 4, which more explicitly points this out. Joshua brings them into the promised land. This is not actually what they're looking for. They're looking for their heavenly home, and that's what Jesus, the true high priest, the true prophet, the true king, who's not conquered just flesh and the devil, he's conquered our sin. And he brings us into the new creation himself. So he crosses through those judgment waters like the Jordan River, and he saves us from our sins, not from outside forces, but from our own sin inside of us that keeps us away from God. And Jordan River, you get a lot of fun symbolism around Jordan River. You get that with the baptism of Jesus, with John the Baptist. So Danny, what do you want to add to this?
I was going to say, isn't it interesting, in the book of Joshua, Old Testament, they go from the wilderness to the Jordan into the promised land.
Yep.
Jesus goes the opposite direction. He
True.
goes in, he gets baptized first in the Jordan, right? So he goes to the promised land, into the Jordan, out into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights to be tempted.
To get tempted. Yep.
And then he comes back and he proclaims, that the year of the Lord's favor has come. So he's, I mean, there is like a we'd say like a recapitulation, like Jesus is undergoing like the same kind of pattern of Israel. I mean, he's born in the promised land, of course. He's born in Bethlehem. And then he goes down to Egypt, right, in Matthew 2. Then he gets baptized in the Jordan. Then he goes out into the wilderness. So he's kind of retracing some, theologically speaking, the steps of the Israelites.
He's tempted in the wilderness, whereas Israel is tempted in the promised land.
Yeah.
And then
and Adam is tested in a garden. So, but he goes out into the wilderness because it's post-fall. So, but he goes out to the place where, the wilderness is always a place of desolation and death.
Yeah.
In the Old Testament, it's a place of curse.
Yep.
He goes out to the place of curse.
Isn't it true that the wording too is that the Holy Spirit carried Jesus to the desert after his baptism,
just
like in Deuteronomy, the whole God carried the Israelites through the wilderness.
I think there's two words used predominant. Danny, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's two dominant words used in the Gospels. One I think is like throw out. There's a balo, which is one of the Greek words. I think the other one is like I think it's delivered or like pushed out, which is also the one that you use of the Jewish priests and Romans, or Judas delivering Jesus over to the Romans and the I think those are the two words used. But it's casting out language. It's what Yahweh does to Adam and Eve in the garden, where he cast them out into the wilderness because they failed in the garden, and then Jesus is cast out into the wilderness and then succeeds in the wilderness and then comes back in. So it's like a forceful, it's a recapitulation. He's doing the same thing, except when the Spirit casts out Jesus, it's not because he disobeyed.
Right.
It's so that he can go through the testing and then obey on our behalf and then proclaim the good news to us.
The verb in Matthew 4 is anago. So it's
carry out ish.
Anekse is the actual form, but the actual word, but the form is anago. So just lead. Yeah. He's led, he's brought, and then ekbalein is the verb form.
It's more a little bit more forceful, like cast out.
Like he's cast out. Yeah, he's kicked. He's like thrust out into the wilderness. So
the
Holy Spirit is definitely
God's
the one
in control. Doing it.
Yeah,
God's
and there's
one.
I think it's also. I mean, it's meant to invoke Genesis 3, casting out language, and this is not because again Jesus failed in he hasn't gone through temptation yet. It's so that he can go through temptation is where he's cast out. Like I said, whereas or conversely, Adam and Eve are cast out not because they're about to go through temptation, but because they failed their temptation. And that's where you get a lot of the same language with the Jordan rivers. They cross through the Jordan River. Again, rivers and Israelites don't usually mix very well, nor does any water and any Jew mix very well. So they go through this water to go into the promised land. And then you get this very explicit callback in John's baptism of Jesus, where he is baptized, sprinkled with the water by John the Baptist. And it's meant to invoke, this is the waters that Israel passed through. And who is being baptized right before Jesus in Matthew 3? It's all the Israelites. It's those who are being baptized. And so he identifies with them both in the Gospels and is identifying them with their kind of Old Testament corporate Israel and himself.
Well, we also see like when this whole Exodus thing started, the parting of the Red Sea, and now we're going back to water events and language and the Jordan River. And
I'm pretty sure, Danny, you might have this quicker off the top of your head. Isn't the ark the thing that's bringing them through? Isn't that the thing that's going right before them in the Jordan River?
Yeah. I just read that.
It's all like you said. It's also
the ark goes first, and then the water stops.
Which is like the two pillars of fire in the Exodus, where it goes through the water and it leads Israel. Now you have the ark, which is the same representation of Yahweh, is leading Israel from the wilderness into the promised land.
Yeah, and I think something that's cool too is those 12 stones that were instructed by God to the captain of the Hebrews, which is Joshua, to be left as a memorial of this great deliverance that are left into the Jordan River. We know that there's obviously 12 tribes of Israel, so 12 is a very significant number. Yep. Then in the New Testament, we know that there are 12 disciples of Jesus who testify about him as the captain of our salvation.
Yep, and you get 12 tribes inscribed on the ephod of the priests as they walk into the temple of Yahweh.
Yeah, and then the pillars of the pillars of the temple in Revelation are the 12 tribes, and then the 12 apostles.
Yeah, I love the number 12.
Nick's all about the symbolism.
And I was born on April 12th. So
but then which 12 tribes are inscribed in the temple in heaven?
Oh yeah,
or the New Jerusalem, right? So
yep,
who's mentioned?
Yeah, exactly.
And then more ties that I found with even Joshua. Joshua was the servant before he was the successor of Moses, and Jesus was the first came to become the servant of the law before he should abolish it.
Yeah, even servant language. And there's Matt Harmon wrote a book. I forget what it's called. It's in the NSBT series. It's on servant of the Lord, I think might be this title. I forget what it was. But he also talks about too that's also that's a pretty significant phrase. I think before Joshua, the only person who's called a servant of Yahweh is Moses. And there's even, servant language, which again, you get in Hebrews 3, where these were servants in the house, and you have the builder of the house, which is Jesus, whom these servants serve. Yep.
Well, it goes back to when Joshua comes to the angel of the Lord and he said, take off your sandals for this ground's holy. And you only see that one other time when Moses saw, experienced God with the burning bush.
Yep. That's
so
hallowed ground.
I got another question here. It's number 3. So this one, I don't know if I'm stretching the text here, but but I wanted to talk about because there's circumcision commands and languages and stuff like that when we see in the Mosaic Law and going into this new land. And then we're talking about they celebrate the Passover.
Yep.
Does that directly correlate to we're Presbyterian, so circumcision correlating to baptism?
Well, Danny's Reformed. He's not Presbyterian.
It's Reformed and Presbyterian.
We're real Reformed. I'm the real Reformed.
So wait, hang on. So circumcision points to baptism, and does the Passover correlate to the Lord's Supper, communion, for our 2 sacraments?
Yep.
Yes.
Very easy question to answer.
Well, yes.
I found that out on my own.
Good job.
Colossians, baptism, circumcision, baptism, Colossians 2, Passover, Lord's Supper, 1 Corinthians 5.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Or just the gospel story, right? The last
or 1 Corinthians
the last
10. Yeah, there's a lot. Yep. There's a lot of stuff you can go with that.
Yep.
Also, I wanted to make sure that
1 Corinthians 11, not 10.
Other references, even in the Old Testament and New Testament, I found that were pretty tied to or reflect the victory of faith over Jericho would be Isaiah 2:12 and 15 and Revelation 17 to 18. So let's talk about the New Testament. Do we see some hopes of already but not yet language in Joshua and how we see it in eschatological?
Well, you get it explicitly in Hebrews 4. That's, I think, where it's most explicitly talked. Might be the only place it's talked about, but it's at least the most explicit in Hebrews 4. Danny's writing a commentary on Hebrews. Maybe he can answer this better than I can.
Well, I mean, I haven't got that far. Well, I guess I have gotten that far, but I mean, but that was last episode on Deuteronomy, right? We talked about Hebrews 3 and 4, Moses, Joshua, Jesus. So
so they're like, they conquer not mostly conquer. They don't really conquer, but they mostly conquer Jericho. The walls come tumbling down. That's their rest of sorts. But even the text of Hebrews says even the Israelites understood that was not their final rest. They weren't looking at this to say, this is it. That's because they don't actually conquer the land. That's very explicit in Judges, because there's a lot of people still left in the land of Canaan, the surrounding regions in the book of Judges. They don't conquer it.
And then my last question, to honor the intended first audience that this was given to, let's just pretend for context reasons you were in the time and place of these events when it was happening. And you don't know what we know now based on, 21st century, and not to be anachronistic or anything like that. So if you were a person during the time of the events, you were an Israelite, you're getting into the promised land, you got it from the Canaanites. Where did the people of Israel see their hope in light of the gospel promise that they knew very clearly about from Genesis 3:15? So right after they defeat their enemies, they know about
they kind of
promise.
defeated their enemies.
Yeah, they know about the mother promise, the seed of the woman crushing the head of the serpent. They know that they are moving forward with the promise given to Abraham. What's going on in their minds right now?
I think you actually get to see that in Joshua 24, because you have Joshua renewing the covenant with them, very similar language to Exodus 24, and Joshua says, hey, here's the covenant, here's the stipulations. And you actually get, I think it's Joshua 24, you get what the people say. They said, all of this stuff we will do. I think you can, like, they think they can do this stuff still. I think, sure, some of them are believing the gospel promise, but they don't conquer the land. And even Joshua, I think, tells them that they don't conquer the land because they still take loot from it. They still are marrying people. They don't destroy everybody. And so they tell him, as like, yeah, we can follow this law. We can do this thing, even though they just then didn't do it. And so there's still some tension, I think, at the end of Joshua, that they're in the land and you're not like really in the land. They're there, but they haven't done what the Lord told them to do. And yet the Lord still kind of allows them to stay there. And that also brings us to Judges. Because even Joshua tells them, I think this is one of the very last verses in Joshua 24. I think he even tells the Israelites, you're not going to do this. It's like, you're not going to stay in, like, you're not going to obey, you're not going to stay in this land. And so there's tension at the end of the book of Joshua, that they're there, but they're definitely not going to stay there. And so it's implicitly him. And I think the author of Hebrews picks this up in Hebrews 4. It's like, this is not the end. This is not where you should be looking for. There's something else coming.
Yeah. If Joshua was able to give him rest, then there wouldn't have been spoken another day of rest. That's what Hebrews 4 says. So,
okay.
All the things that they experienced were all like pictures to them and the fulfillments of God's faithfulness, all his ancient promises. But, when they say, hey, we're going to serve the Lord, Joshua's like, you can't, he's holy.
He tells them straight up. It's like, you're not going to do that.
He won't forgive your sins. If you disobey him. They're like, no, we're going to serve him. And then he's like, all right, put away your gods and, serve him. And, it says they served him. The end of Joshua says, the Israelites served the Lord. What's the verse? Verse 31. They served the Lord all the days of Joshua, all the days of the elders who outlived Joshua, and had known all the work that the Lord had did for Israel. So, there's a general, there's a recognition that they're, not going to be able to do it. But then there's also like a general kind of statement, like, yeah, they served the Lord. They, in general speak, they weren't serving other gods and so forth. But, the very next verse of like the Bible, or the very next book, the first verse, and so forth. It's like, okay,
the second Joshua dies, things go bad.
A lot of problems.
Yeah. And I think it's also what Danny said. And notice the wording used at the end of Joshua. They served in the days of, or during the time of Joshua and the elders. It's not like, and they served God forever when they were staying here. It's only during the time of some of these leaders, which is exactly what you get in the book of Judges, which we'll get to next week. Is they're kind of good for one of the judges, or during the time of some of the judges, and then the second they die, it goes downward again.
And then you get the kings, and it's like there's some good kings, most of them are terrible. There's some little revival here and there, but for the most part, it's all downhill until last king gets his eyes plucked out, and they're all taken into exile.
Yeah. And I think it's too easy to kind of put a cherry on top of Joshua and make this kind of a feel-good story, when the end of Joshua is like, yeah, sure, there's obedience, like Danny said, but it's like kind of marked by you're not going to do this, even though there's been bits and pieces here, but you think you can still do this on your own. You think you can still follow the, like, you think that's the point. They're like, we can do this. We're good enough. We're God's people. Gosh darn it. We're going to get it done.
Yep.
And Joshua was like, hold up, hold on. That's not how this works.
For the second book in a row, the leader of the Israelites dies. So we got the end of Deuteronomy, Moses dies, the end of Joshua, he's gone. So we enter Judges next week with no Joshua, no Moses. Man, do
Really
they still got hope? Do they still got hope? What's going on?
Yeah. Yep. And
there's not really a leader, right? So everyone does what's right in their own eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like today.
That's gonna get
That sounds a lot like today.
Yeah, I'm gonna put Nick on one more hot seat. Do you know the only tribe of Israel to not get a land allotment?
Is it Dan?
No, they're the north. Yeah,
I know. Let me try again. To not get a land allotment.
Yeah, because they already quote unquote have land allotment.
So is it pretty easy? Is it easier answer than I think?
yes,
It is. It's the Levites.
Levites.
Oh, Levites, yeah, because they're
they're the temple people. They're the
their
ones
portion
who,
is the Lord. Yeah,
yeah, their portion is the Lord. And it's kind of funny because it's not what happens at the end of Judges. It's they start looking for a land, or they start looking for different priests and judges and whatnot. And so you get some people an allotment of land, and then you get in Judges, as we'll get into next week, that people aren't super happy with the land that they got, or questioning some of the land that they got, and they're not very excited about. Even in the promised land, they're still grumbling in the promised land. They're grumbling in the wilderness, and now they grumble in the promised land.
That you're seeing them lose their trust with God more and more, based on what you're saying. They're now trying to get that land, and then because they don't have a king, fast forward to 1st, 2nd Samuel, we start seeing them really try to make their own man-made king, and get Saul. And that points, obviously there's other times earlier in scripture where people lost their patience with God's promises and providence, and they, like Sarah telling Abraham,
it ain't coming fast enough. And that kind of sounds like me. It's like I'm not the one who's trusting.
Or Sarah telling Abraham to have a child with Hagar instead of waiting for the promise. So anyway, we'll talk about that stuff.
Yeah, and that's maybe last little thing is, I think, to maybe help with the point that Nick made with the gospel promise, it's, even though the Israelites don't obey the Haram mandate, they don't devote everything to the Lord. They don't destroy all of Canaan. They don't, they take loot from it. They take wives from it. They take husbands from it, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
They're still given land allotment in Joshua 13-21, even though they don't obey the command of Yahweh to purify the land. So even where do we get land allotment promise from? We get it from Abraham. We get told Abraham, your descendants will fill this land. They will walk into this promised land, and
through Isaac.
Yeah, they walk into a form of the promised land, sure, the land, like the physical land of the promised land, but it's not because they're the ones who obeyed to get into it. It's because God is still gracious to his promise with Abraham that they still inherit this land, because it's definitely not because Israel obeyed Yahweh to earn this.
Yeah. Cool. I hope this is making sense for the audience, and it's helping me tremendously. It's probably a huge review for you guys, but for me, I'm getting introduced to this is biblical theology. Like, this is great. So I hope
redemptive historical preaching.
Yeah. So I hope people are getting a lot from it. Other than the Bible Project, I don't see this really out there as much.
I'll admit, even the Bible Project, it's not terribly clear at points. And there's some points that I disagree with.
Well, walking through scripture, start to finish, biblical theology, us and the Bible Project's the only one I can think of doing that right now. And not to knock anyone else, but I mean, for our past seasons, there's more systematic things, apologetic things. But this is good. This is good.
Danny, anything more to add before we end?
No, I thought it was good. I mean, these are the parts of the Bible that people don't know so much about. And we have the Judges. I mean, people know what, like Solomon, Samson,
Samson,
and Delilah, and it's like, Bible don't be tempted, whatever temptation,
So the tent peg stuff with jail. And, there's some stuff.
So that'll be fun.
Like, kind of popular imagination.
There's
but
more than just Sunday school stories.
a lot
Yep,
more.
yep.
And I mean, honestly, like Judges is super dark, and I think a lot of times sermons and worship leaders or preachers and worship leaders, whatever, like tend not to like the dark text. Like you tend to like the very light, kind of happy texts. But you need the dark text. You need to know the stuff that we failed to do in order for the gospel to be that much clearer to us.
Yep.
And to show your people like it's okay to have dark times. Like it's okay, not like of course not to sin, but like that's not the end of the line. It's like your sin is, if you're in Christ, your sin no longer separates you from Christ, but we can still weep and lament for this stuff. But it doesn't separate you from Christ anymore. That's been taken care of.
Going into next week, I feel like even right now we are living in times like the Book of Judges.
We're between Christ's first and second coming. That's all I can say.
Well, yeah, for sure. But
there's never been a true and righteous ruler ever in the history of the world outside of Jesus Christ.
No, absolutely not. So
cool. Yeah. Well, we got the Book of Judges coming next week. It'll be fun. I think, Danny, you've preached on the Book of Judges before?
Never.
Well, you haven't?
No.
Okay.
No.
I've preached from the Book of Judges, so it's relatively fresh in my mind. So this will be fun to talk about next week. But yeah, we'll kind of plug where at, so people can find me at Redeemer OPC in Santa Maria. Sunday school is at 9:45, and our Sunday worship service is at 11. This is in the Central Coast, so like 45 miles northeast of Santa Barbara. Find us at Temple Bethel. So
the house of God, huh?
Yeah, that's Temple
the
Bethel.
House of God.
It's a Jewish temple, which is kind of fun, or Jewish synagogue.
Synagogue,
it's fun to meet there and preach Christ there. But that's where you can find me. Where can they find you, Danny?
Cool. Oceanside United Reformed Church, Carlsbad, California, sunny San Diego, North County of San Diego. 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. Then we have Sunday school, and then they have service at night, 5 p.m. And then when this airs, will be the new year. So we also have a Bible study, midweek Bible study that meets in men's group and women's group that meets on Tuesday nights. So people can find me at oceansideurc.org. That's the church. Or you can just find me on social media.
Awesome. And then Nick, where can they find you? I think at this point you're transitioning.
Yeah, well, I'll promote the current church based on recording now. I am a member. I'm not a pastor or anything like that, just a member at Trinity Orthodox Presbyterian Church in Dana Point. More importantly than me, the pastor there is John Morse.
More important than you, but he's just the pastor there.
Yeah, don't try to come find me. Go talk to him. I mean, another thing is, by the time you guys listen to this episode, I won't even be living in this area anymore. So, but I want to promote that church. That's the godly church I've been at. I love it. And it's Trinity Orthodox Presbyterian Church, and meet at 9:30 a.m. Palisades Elementary School in Dana Point. So check it out.
Cool.
He's a West Cal grad. He knows Danny and Peter. We all know each other. So
cool. Well, we'll see everybody for everything was right in their own eyes.
Yeah.
Monday. Book of Judges. We'll see if it's right in our own eyes. All right. See you guys next week.
See ya.